We have less than 1 hour away from the Saturn moving into Aries, and it's now late in London. And in London, it's going to be at 12:11. That's after midnight, 11 minutes past midnight, that Saturn will be moving into the sign of Aries. So I'm very grateful for that. It's been a long journey the last couple of years. I wanted to show how long it's going to be in the sign of Aries. And you can see Saturn is here at 29 degrees and 59. So if we go minutes ahead, I'm going to go quickly. And you'll see when I get to, you can see I'm moving the time here. But if you're in USA, then it's either going to be 8 hours behind or 5 hours behind, depending on your location. So I'm going to read what this means for the collective. I'm just going to show you move in. 1, 2, 3, 11. There you go. Is it working? It should be moving. Oh, there it is. It did move. So there you go. So there it is. It's at 11 minutes past to the second, but I've gone by minutes here. So what we have is that Saturn is my focus on this video, and I'll make it short and sweet. So Saturn in Aries, this is about a collective reckoning. And if we take the length of time that it's going to be there before I start explaining weeks. I know it's going to hit Neptune. I've made other videos about the conjunction, and I'm not going to focus on that conjunction today. But what I do like about this is that at the moment we have Saturn, Neptune, and we have asteroid Lilith, which is Lilith of the Garden of Eden, who didn't take any crap. Okay, so this is an interesting configuration to me. May be the wrong word, but she was rebellious. It's like, I'm not having that. She was, and this is good. And I think that she caused a lot of trouble because she was rebellious. There's a lot of stories around that, biblical stuff, and also history as well. So we're going to go years ahead now. So I'm going to go. So this is the 14th, 13th of February if you're in the USA, 14th of February, just past midnight if you're in the UK. So we can all take a deep breath. It's finally out of Pisces, but I was born with it at 27 degrees Pisces, so I'm stuck with it for life. And then in my progress chart, it's going to remain at 29 degrees retrograde in Pisces for the rest of my life, however long I've got here. I went far ahead, and I can see that to be the case. So we'll go a year ahead. In a year's time, it will be at 11 degrees, and then it will be 2028, it will be at 23 degrees. See here? You can see how slow Neptune is. That's 2 years. At 0 degrees, it'll be at 4. And then if we go months, and we go 1, 2, there you go. So that's 2 years, 2 months, and it'll probably go retrograde back into, as it normally does, back into a sign. So let's see if it does or not, or whether it's done at that point. Oh, it looks good. So it doesn't look like it's moving back into Aries at that point anyway, that I configured at that point. So let's go back to today, and then I'll tell you what it means for the collective Saturn in the sign of Aries. So 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Oh my gosh, 2026. I'm celebrating by being kind to myself and self-love and peace. So if we look at Saturn in Aries, you can see there, and we know we have lovely Lilith hanging in there as well, the dreams of the collective. We know what we are looking toward, particularly changing the way children are treated and how we treat each other. And that's boys and girls, yeah? That's not just one side here, it's the collective. And then we have Saturn there too. So Saturn in Aries collectively through the this pattern, many of us are sensing now that what we're looking at is that we're seeing the abuse of power, exposure of corruption, disillusionment, the desire for self-protection, and the anger at human cruelty. This is most people are feeling that way. So this is Saturn in Aries tension because the ruler is Mars, and Mars is also involved with Pluto if we think about it. Mars and Scorpio, there's a connection. So then, if we say also that Aries governs identity, our identity is always the first house, not of our own charts, but of the zodiacs in what we're looking at now. You can see Aries. And it's assertion, it can be force. So this could work either way. This could be coming at us or how we're feeling. It's about the right to exist and the use of our own will. It governs accountability, very interesting word for this time, limits, consequences, and the structures of authority. So Saturn entering Aries right now, the collective question is, we could look at it this way, who has the right to act? Who has the right to dominate? And who is held accountable for force? And we know that force historically has, it's been misused, and Saturn is coming in to audit this, yeah? And it's a reckoning with aggression. So Aries is raw impulse. Saturn restrains and examines. Collectively, this can manifest as exposure of abuses of power, which we are experiencing. Now, that did enter briefly last year, briefly. Saturn did go into Aries and then it retrograded, it went back into Pisces. So we've had some of this already, this feeling, but now we're into the real thing of Saturn in Aries. So we can also be looking at abuses of power, legal or structural consequences for aggression. So aggression can be silent against each other as well. Cultural debates around dominance, masculinity, control and authority. And we may see increasing regulation around the use of force, whether it's military, political, or corporate, because there's a lot of that goes on in the monetary side of things, healthcare, the list goes on, politics generally. And the shadow side is so every sign carries like a shadow side and a higher octave as well. So it's not one thing on the other, it's archetypal. And Saturn transit carries a shadow. In Aries, that shadow can look like defensive authoritarianism and attack. It's politics, paranoia around identity, like who am I? Where am I going? It's like, who am I in this body on Earth? And we could have increased control systems justified as protection, which we had in 2020. Saturn met with Pluto in Capricorn. There was a conjunction. And we also have fear-based leadership. So there may be a lot of fear of, I've seen a few people resigning on the news today because of the Epstein files, which is interesting that people will maybe step down because it's too much for them, that the content of the emails they were sending. Fear-based leadership can rise when a culture feels unsafe. So societies can feel threatened. And when they do, they choose control over integration. And that is the risk embedded in this transit. So exposure of power structures, recent public revelations, as we know about elite corruption. And it symbolizes something larger than any one individual, because as we all know, these abuses are not just happening at the top, they're happening globally in households as well. There are different types of abuses that are going on and in communities. This also can represent misuse of power, exploitation protected by status, collective complicity, and systems that shield perpetrators. And I definitely grew up where perpetrator was, there was concealment around that. I grew up in that period of time when certain things were coming out in society, like Jimmy Savile, and you may not know who he is, but you could Google that. So there's a lot of stuff around abuse of children in the past and with the churches as well, as we also know. So as Saturn moves through Aries, we've got dominance, entitlement, accountability, and all of that will come into focus. And will be harder to ignore. We will see whose wields force, who is protected, and who pays the price. So for survivors of abuse, this period can feel like a double-edged sword because although it's visible, it's also overwhelming, and Saturn exposes, but Aries confronts. And, some of us will not just let what we've seen go, which is good, but we have to do it in a way that we're making change realistically. So when the collective mirrors the personal, when collective reckoning mirrors personal history, the boundary can blur. The nervous system does not easily separate private trauma from global corruption, and it can feel like the same pattern at scale. And symbolically, that this is, where surviving an abuse microsystem does not mean carrying the weight of the abusive, macro system, meaning the whole world. If we'd been through abuse ourselves and we've done a lot of healing work, we could be very triggered by all of this Epstein stuff at the moment. And there's other things in the world as going on as well, like there are wars going on. So when we've survived some form of abuse in our life, heavy duty abuse, then we don't want to be taking the weight of the world of all of these people that have been going around abusing. So we're going to have to manage ourselves. And, whilst this may force collective confrontation, each individual, we've got to sort of watch how much exposure we can take ourselves. I've watched so much, and now I realize that I've got to get back into doing things that do bring me peace and self-care. The higher potential of this, if we manage to integrate this consciously, Saturn in Aries can produce mature leadership, accountable use of power, conscious restraint of aggression, and stronger legal frameworks and clearer boundaries around consent and authority. And this can move us from raw dominance to be a disciplined force. It's not a gentle energy, but it can build a spine, if you get me, like a backbone, yeah? It can demand integrity, how it will be used. That's Saturn. And then in the years ahead, we may see identity hardening, conflicts over autonomy, strong personalities rising, and increased demands for sovereignty and less tolerance for blurred boundaries. And the atmosphere may feel more confrontational than the previous Saturn in Pisces phase, because Saturn in Pisces was about dissolving things, dissolving the things with regard to Neptune. And Aries is like pushes back, it's just come in, it's just saying, it's making itself heard, like a baby cries when it wants something, and it gets, to figure out how it's going to get what it wants. So we're all on a path. I don't know if the baby thing, just explaining the signs of how we begin to stand up for ourselves, we begin to walk, all of those things. Aries is pioneering because it does things that maybe have not been done before as well. So with each of us, if we look at the collective themes and we look at the power dynamics, and we need to look at, are we reactivating old wounds through constant exposure? Really interesting thought to have. And there is a difference between awareness and nervous system overload. So we need to make sure we're not overloading our systems so that we are able to carry out our duty to ourselves and what we want for our lives as well, because we can get lost in news coverage. I think you get me there. So then I want to see it before I go. You see this Saturn. I just want to see if it does go retrograde. I'm going months ahead back into it goes retrograde, but I want to see if once it leaves the sign of Aries in 2028, there's 27, there you go. That's very interesting. So what's going on there before it leaves? Let's go days. Before it leaves the sign of Aries, it will go retrograde. So if I go back, there you go. So that is the August 2027. So what it's going to do, if you watch here, it will go one, two, the stations. See the little S? Now it's turned red S, RX, okay? So then it goes retrograde. And then if we go weeks ahead, because it goes retrograde for about 5 months, so months one, two, three, four, five. Then it will go direct one, two, three. And then we're going to go weeks. I love solar fire. So then it goes into 2028, it goes into the sign of Taurus. And we're going to go weeks ahead. One, two, three, four, five, seven, eight. And then it's, I think I'm correct. So it does go retrograde, but it does not go back into Aries. So there you go. Okay, I'm leaving that there. I hope you have some plans for yourself to be kind and loving to yourself for the weekend and doing some pleasant things. Thanks for listening.